G'day, welcome to another lesson. We have all been in a meeting where the speaker has said, "I'm nearly finished." And every one of us in that meeting know that when a speaker says, "I'm nearly finished," what do we know? Exactly that. He's nowhere near finished. In fact, that plane is not coming into land, it's still ascending. It's not descending. He's still got a whole lot of gear that he wants to communicate to you and I. But to soften the blow, for the next 15 minutes that he's going to speak for, he says, "I'm nearly," or she says, "I'm nearly finished." In this session, I want to look at timing. Now, it's important for us to understand right from the top of this lesson that there is more to timing than watching the clock. When I say we're going to be looking at timing, I'm not just talking about watching the clock and making sure that we start on time, that we finish on time. That's part of the deal. But there's a whole lot more to consider on this subject of timing. So whether it's a 3-minute testimony, a 20-minute message, a sermon, whether it's a baptism, whatever the platform is, these principles of timing apply. And so we want to look at some of the principles in this lesson. President Bill Clinton, when he was president a few years ago, although in the American system they still call them president, don't they, even though they're not in office anymore. So President Clinton is known to have said to the incoming president, George Bush, on how to be a better speaker, and I think it's there in your notes there, he says it's all in the timing. You want to be a good speaker? He said it's all about timing. And I like what he says. And he uses 2 key words here in that quote. He says on timing, it's about the pacing and the careful passing of the words on the page, letting it unfold, he says, like a good sermon or lecture. Just by way of introduction, I just want to focus on those 2 key words. Timing is about pacing and passing. Two words that start with P. Pacing and passing. Pacing. That's in reference to the length. You know, pacing your message out. If you've got 20 minutes, then take 20 minutes. Pace it out so that you use that 20 minutes. If you've got 3 minutes, then you've got to look at what you've got and you've got to pace that out. You know, if you've got 20 minutes, don't speak like a bull at a gate and finish it in 5. Finished, off we go. You know, you haven't paced. You haven't used your time well. I guess we could say in the Christian context, you haven't been a good steward of your time. So there's this thought of pacing the words, pacing your message and the content of your message according to the time frame that you have. But then this word passing, I like this word passing. I'll be really honest with you. When I saw that, I thought, I wonder, I wasn't quite sure what he meant by that. And so I did look it up. And we use that word passing there in the sense of analyzing, analyzing and considering the implications of those words that you use. I like that. Let me read it again. Timing. It's all in the timing. The pacing and the careful passing of the words on the page. Those words that you've typed out, that you've written out, you want to pass them. Not pass them off or pass them by, but you want to make sure that you are passing those words, that you're communicating in such a way that not only you understand what you're saying, but the listeners understand. And it's about considering the implications of what you're saying. You know, we've all been in that place where we'll speak off the top of our head, or you'll hear someone else speak off the top, and you think, I wonder if they realize what they're saying. I wonder if they realize the implication of that. Do you realize what you've just said and what people now are thinking? And so I like what Bill Clinton says. It's about the pacing and the passing of those words. And so, you know, there's something to be said for timing, pacing, and passing. So let's have a look at some principles then with respect to timing. It's important for you to know your allocated time. It's your responsibility to know how much time you have been allocated. You have to find that out. In fact, you don't want to find that out when you get to the meeting. You want to find that out because that's really key for your preparation and for the research that you're going to do, for you to know how much time you have been allocated. And particularly if you're speaking as one of many speakers, time becomes really important. The first speaker's got all the time in the world, they think. But then when it comes to the last speaker, and we've already gone over an hour, and people are tired and want to go home, you've done a disservice to those other speakers. So knowing your allocated time. I had the privilege of officiating my uncle's funeral a couple of months ago on the Central Coast. And I love my uncle and my auntie. And my two nephews, my cousin Deborah and cousin Graham. And we are not close. I'm not close with my cousins, with Graham and Debbie, but I'm certainly very close to my uncle and my auntie, and have always had time for them. And so it was a real privilege for me to have the opportunity. My father had passed away a couple of years ago, and he would have officiated that service, I'm sure. But nevertheless, I did it, and I put everything together, and I know how to do this, but I certainly learned a big lesson on that day because I failed to give a time frame to my cousin Graham. And we had booked that particular hall there for 40 minutes, and we had to be out within that hour because then the next funeral service starts and people start coming in. So timing is really important. They've allocated time. Well, I got up and I did a welcome and introduction, which went for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And then I invited Graham. He was going to be the first speaker. And I hadn't had any contact with him, and which wasn't unusual, but certainly I learned from this because he spoke for 5 minutes. It became 10 minutes, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. He took the whole service, all the time that we've been allocated, 40 minutes, or bar my 2 or 3 introduction, he took the rest of it, 40 minutes. And, sure, I look back and I think to myself, I should have just got up after 10 and said, thank you, Graham, But this is, it was his dad, and he'd been estranged from his dad for many, many years. And so when I talked to him about it after, at the afternoon tea there, he said, well, Jeremy, I know I went on, but I had to get some things off my chest, and, there was some things that I had to set the record straight, and, he certainly had a wrong spirit about it. But I certainly learned that I should have, I don't know why I didn't actually, I should have given every speaker the time frame. I didn't, and I paid a hefty price for that, because then all those other people that wanted to speak couldn't speak, because we had to move out. The next one was coming in. So it's your responsibility. Speaker? Speakeress, is that right? That's probably the wrong thing to say there. It's your responsibility to know how much time you have been allocated. The second thing I want to say about timing is plan your content according to your allocated time. This is very important. A lot of people plan their content according to what they want to say. Well, I got so much I want to say. I've got so much revelation. I got so much that I need to say, so much that people need to hear. Even for you as an MC, you've got that microphone, you've got that stage, you're emceeing that meeting. You have to be careful. You have to be very selective as to what you say and when you say it and how long you speak for. So you plan your content not according to what you want to say and what you think people need to hear, but based on your allocated time. Some of you that are just starting out, you will learn, and hopefully you do learn, but those of you that are experienced speakers, you will learn. Experienced speakers know how long it takes to communicate content that you've prepared. You know that. In fact, I think in one of the lessons previously, we looked at how many words per second you speak, and then we added that up per minute and per, I think I had it jotted down here, you know, if you speak 4 words a second, that's 240 a minute. That's 7,200 words in a 30-minute block. So if you've got 30 minutes to speak, you know that you can speak 7,200 words. And it's quite easy these days, isn't it? On the computer program, just highlight that and it'll tell you exactly how many words you've typed out. And it starts to give you an understanding. But even without that help there, experienced speakers know how long it takes to communicate content that you've got. I guess what I'm talking about here is self-awareness. Self-awareness of knowing what time you've got, how many words and how long it's going to take you to communicate that information. You know, can I just say to you, you don't need to, every time you speak, you don't need to give everything you know on that subject. You know, in fact, it's impossible to. If you're going to speak on the subject of forgiveness, it would be impossible for you to download to everybody everything you know on forgiveness. I mean, it's almost an inexhaustible subject, the subject of forgiveness. And it's really a craft, it's really a skill to be able to plan your content to that time and working out. You know, it's about crafting that talk so that you communicate essentially what has to be communicated. What can I say and what do I need to say to get that point across, to get that message across? You know, what you'll realize is that you have to mercilessly cull your content. You have to be ruthless in culling your content so that you get your message to a place where it fits the time frame and it fits the time frame well. That you're able to say what you need to and get that message across in the time that you've been allocated. I always prepare, and I probably do it subconsciously now. I intentionally did it when I first started out. I will prepare 20% more than what I need so that I've got an abundance. I've got more than what I need in the preparation so that then I can cull it and cut it back. You know, people get afraid to cut back when they don't have enough. And then they get nervous. Oh, I can't cut back. I'm going to have hardly anything to say. Well, prepare more than you need so that you can cut back and have just what is essential for you to speak. The third thing I want to say about timing is about rehearsing. You know, effective rehearsing. I like to, and I am a big believer in rehearsal. You know, I'll go for walks after I've prepared messages. In the middle of messages, I'll be preaching those points and speaking those points out. If I'm emceeing a meeting, I'll be going over and over, what am I going to say? You know, not you know, to the last word, but certainly I'll have concepts and ideas and thoughts, and I'll be developing them and rehearsing them over. What I like to do for myself is put myself under some pressure. You don't want the only time you experience pressure in the delivery of that message to be when you get up on stage with a microphone. You want to already have put yourself under some pressure. That pressure is going to be good for you. It's going to be good for you to feel that pressure and work with that pressure in the rehearsal before you get up on stage. I like to rehearse standing up. I like to speak out loud. I like to pace. I like to walk around. I like to rehearse exactly how I'm going to be on the stage. Don't just sit there in your chair in front of your desk and rehearse, because that's not what you're going to be doing. You are going to be standing. You are going to be speaking out loud. You are going to be moving around. And so you want to get the feel of that, of what that feels like. Remember when you started to learn to drive a car and you would put your foot on the accelerator and you would look down at that accelerator, and you know the speed is 60, and so you'd be looking at the accelerator. But how many of you know now, you know, it doesn't take long, maybe 20 hours of driving from when you begin, that you no longer even have to look at that accelerator. Your foot just knows. It knows what 60 feels like. Your foot on the accelerator, you know what 100 feels like. And so you will learn. But in the initial stages, give yourself some pressure. Put some pressure on yourself to rehearse, as if it was the real thing. If you can, speak to a test audience. Grab your kids or grab someone and practice. The other day I was in the car and I was preaching in chapel here, and we were driving, and my daughter works for the college, and she said, "Dad, what are you going to preach on? Give me your 4 points." And I thought, yeah, I will, So I gave her my 4 points, and I almost started preaching them to her. But it was good, for me to feel a bit of pressure. Wow, am I going to say that? Am I really going to say that? Should I be saying that? And she was giving me some feedback, courts there, and it was good. If you can, give yourself a couple of dress rehearsals. The funny thing is, you go to a theatre, and those people have rehearsed on stage, line for line, 10, 15 times before you sit in that seat and watch that live production. So why shouldn't you and I also give ourselves to effective rehearsal and practice and developing our speeches in that way? You'll have a lot of more confidence when you get up there with the mic if you've rehearsed. So have some effective rehearsal. Don't shortcut on the rehearsal. Don't shortcut on that. You'll pay for it when you get up on the stage, believe me. Number 4, starting on time. We've talked about that briefly, just mentioned that. Your time starts, here's a thought, your time starts as soon as you're introduced. You've had those speakers get up and thank you, and they want to tell a funny story and this, and then they say, okay, well, I'm going to start now. Well, actually, you've just been babbling on for 10 minutes. That was your time. Your time starts as soon as you walk up on stage, as soon as you have been introduced. So that means that you have to give careful attention to preparation. How many of you, I've done it myself, you get up there and then you realise there's no water. And then you're asking someone, could you please get me some water? You're taking, that's your time. Or then, oh, sorry, I forgot to give you my USB stick with a couple of pictures on. And so then you want to give that to someone and no one's tested it to see if it works. You're eating up your time. You can't get more time. Stop the clock, I've got to run to the toilet. No, you should have done that before, And so there's a whole lot of things that you make sure you're prepared, because your time starts as soon as you're introduced. Here's a thought, and this could just be me and a personal thing, but I never ask for more time when I'm on the stage. If you've been introduced and you know it's late, and, don't get up there and say, look, I'm really looking forward to being here today, and I know we've started a bit late. Do you mind if can I go till 20 past when you've been told to finish at 10 past? Don't do it. It puts the MC under undue pressure. It puts the person who's controlling that meeting, how are they going to say no? It's not fair for you to say that. Whatever time you've been given, you work with that time. I remember we were on a trek once. How am I going for time here? I've lost track of my time. We're all good. Thanks, Lindsay. I remember speaking, we took a trek team to a church, and I'd asked this guy to give a testimony, communion message. I said, you got 5 minutes. Well, I just knew straight away when I gave him the 5 minutes, he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy at all. He fancied himself as a pretty good speaker. But communion message, that's all it needed, 5 minutes. And so what he did, he went around to a couple of other students who were giving testimonies to find out if they needed the full allotment of time they'd been given. And then he came back to me about 10 minutes later. He said, Jeremy, I've talked to others. Not everyone's going to use the full amount of time that they've been allocated. So I worked it out that I could actually use some of their time. So if you don't mind, I've got 10 minutes now. I nearly said his name then. I said to him, hey, listen to me. I gave you 5 minutes. That's what you've got. What other people have got and whether they use it or not, that's not your concern. What is your concern is that you use the allocated time that you've got. So you've got 5. And after 5, I am going to walk up now, because you're making a big deal about it. I'm going to walk up and I'm going to stand next to you. I'm going to take the microphone off you. So make sure you finish. Well, he did finish in his 5. We talked about it after he wasn't happy. The reality is you have to respect the time that you've been given and use that time. Yep. Fifthly, measure your progress and adjust. As you're going, and you'll learn this. You'll learn the art of being able to work with the time that you've got. And as you go, you're processing. Okay, I've used up 10, I've got 15 to go, I've got 4 points left, and you begin to adjust that message and adjust your content as you go. The truth is, you'll have done your rehearsal and it fitted in the rehearsal, but sometimes when you get up, particularly if you're doing a longer speech, you'll get sidetracked, or maybe the Holy Spirit impresses on you to speak a little bit longer on that point, and you do that. But then, of course, because you've developed a thought and used more time, it doesn't mean that you can keep going on. You have to adjust that message. What I do when I prepare is I prepare in blocks. So I look, okay, introduction, I've got this amount of time. Points, if I've got 3 points, I've got 5 for that one, 8 for that one, 2 for that one, and then I need 5 for the conclusion or whatever it might be. And I encourage you to do that. Look at your message structure in blocks and time it out in blocks as well. We're all going to be needing to adjust our messages from time to time. Sometimes it's okay to leave out material that you've prepared. You just got to believe. And particularly, for us in a Christian context, we've got to believe that God's going to use what we say, irrespective of how we say it, and whether we, mess it up or not, if we're being authentic and we're being genuine and we're in prayer, and God will use what you say. Last thing I'm going to say on timing is have a clock or timing device in sight. Number 6, here's the truth. If you cannot see the time, you won't be able to manage your time. It's funny that I would have said that a minute ago when I asked Lindsay what the time is. I can see it now. But if you can't see it, and I guess that was my point in asking Lindsay, I couldn't see the clock. I lost sight of it. And you lose sight of how much time have I used and how much time is left. I want to encourage you, it's your responsibility to make sure you have some timing device. Don't rely on them, the church or the wherever the venue is. I make sure I've got a watch, or I'll make sure I've got my phone there. I prepare myself. I don't want to get caught out and embarrass myself or embarrass others. And so provide that for yourself. In conclusion, you've heard the saying, the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. It's all about timing. It's all about timing. So prepare well, research well, your content and delivery. Timing is like the X factor. It really makes that difference in your presentation. God bless you. See you next lesson.